Alright, today we will be talking about the NBA MVP race. So, this season, unlike any other season that I've seen at least, or in recent history, we have at least 6 MVP candidates still. And we are more than a third done with the NBA season, almost halfway done with the NBA season. The All-Star game is in less than a month, it's in about a month. And we still have 6 legitimate candidates for the MVP this season in the NBA. So this season will definitely go down as a historic one. So let's get into it and talk about each of the candidates and who I think has the edge. So originally, if you haven't seen the video I made a couple months ago, in like the second week of the NBA season, I predicted that the top 3 candidates for MVP would be Joel Embiid, Ja Morant, and Luka Doncic. And ultimately, Luka would win the MVP was my prediction a couple months ago. And I'll link that video in the description so you can check that out as well. However, now that we are, like I said, about halfway through the NBA season, we can see that Ja Morant isn't really in the MVP conversation. However, Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid definitely are. So when we think about the 6 guys that still have a legitimate chance of winning MVP this season, we have Giannis, Jason Tatum, Nikola Jokic, Luka, KD, and Joel Embiid. And all 6 of those guys still have about an equal shot of winning. Now, with Nikola Jokic, to start off with him, he, of course, as you probably know, is the 2-time MVP, back-to-back seasons. And so him winning a 3rd MVP is going to be very difficult, just because the NBA doesn't like to give out the same award back to back to back, especially not 3 years in a row. The last time someone won 3 MVPs in a row was Larry Bird in like the 80s. What's crazy is even though Nikola Jokic may not win MVP because he's won it 2 years in a row, and the NBA doesn't really like to give out the award, to 3 times in a row, definitely. He's still averaging 25 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block a game. These numbers are absolutely crazy. He is a center, basically averaging a triple-double. He's averaging 9.7 assists. And so he's 0.3 assists away from averaging a triple-double, which only 2 players have done in NBA history. Russell did it a couple years ago in 2016, or 2017, I think. And Oscar Robertson did it way back in the 70s. So what's crazy about this is they were both point guards. They have the ball most of the time. But Nikola Jokic is a center, and he's almost averaging a triple-double, which is why he's still, a legitimate contender to win an MVP 3 years in a row, as crazy as that may sound. Now, when we check out Jason Tatum's stats, which is the next player I want to look at, he is averaging a whopping 30.8 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block a game. And the Celtics are on top of the East right now, which is a huge factor in MVP. Because as much as it is most valuable player and not most valuable team, and it is technically an individual award, your team ranking is very important because it shows how important that player is to that franchise. And so Jason Tatum has an incredible opportunity to win his first MVP, and I think he'll definitely win a lot. But I do know that he is sometimes on and off, especially in big performances. So that may sway voters' opinions, because in big moments he usually doesn't play, as great as he sometimes does against smaller teams. Now, looking at Giannis, which is the next player we'll look at here, he has won 2 years before Jokic, so he's won it 2 times as well. However, I think he has the lowest chance of winning it this year. His numbers are still crazy: 31 points, 12 rebounds, basically 5 assists, 1 block, and 1 steal a game. So his numbers are crazy, don't get me wrong. However, his team has been very on and off, and multiple times he's had under 10 points a game. For example, against the Hawks, just on the 11th yesterday, he had 7 points, 3 for 10 shooting, still 18 rebounds and 10 assists. So he's still played well, of course, right? And 9 points, 4 rebounds against the Hornets when they got blown out last week, right? So he and his team as well has been not very consistent. which, like I said, with Jason Tatum and his team being on top of the East, team standing does matter. And with Giannis's team not being consistent, if they kind of are middle of the pack in the East, you know, somewhere anywhere between 3rd and 6th place, it's going to be very difficult for him to win MVP, especially if he puts up more single-digit games. Now moving on to Joel Embiid. He, this season, is putting up whopping 33.6 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks a game. And when we look at the 76ers and their standing, we can see that they're 4th, right behind the Bucks. They are 25-15, Bucks are 27-14. So, and of course the Celtics are 1st, the Nets are 2nd. So Joel Embiid has been putting up amazing numbers for the past, 3 seasons. He's always fell behind kind of Nikola Jokic, and I think this season his numbers are still kind of behind Nikola Jokic's, to be fair, and they are 4th in the Eastern Conference, right? So it's going to be very difficult for Joel Embiid to kind of edge over and win MVP when he's not really the best center in the NBA. As even though his numbers are crazy, Nikola Jokic's numbers are even crazier, and Jokic's team, the Nuggets, are on top of the West at 1st, and Joel Embiid's team is 4th. Of course, they can turn that around because the difference is about 5 games between 1st and 4th, and they can definitely go on a crazy run, especially with him and James Harden being on the same team and them being a solid defensive and offensive team. So they could pull out a 1st or 2nd seed, which would help Joel Embiid's chances of winning MVP tremendously. So as I said months ago, I predicted that Luka Doncic would win the MVP this season, and he definitely has the stats to back up my claim. He is averaging ridiculous numbers: 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists with 2 steals and 1 block per game. The thing is, he has very, very little help. Somehow, some way though, he has managed to get his team to 5th place with only really about 1 game out of 4th and 2 games out of 3rd. Which the 4th seed belongs to the Kings and the Pelicans are the 3rd seed. But they're only 2 games behind these 2 teams, the Mavericks. So if they are able to string a couple of wins together and kind of, finish anywhere between 3 and 5th, which is what I said, I didn't expect, so many other players to play at this level and contend for MVP. I thought that if Luka's team was able to get around like the 5th spot, he would have the stats to be able to win MVP. He has the stats to win MVP. It's just that there's so many players that have similar stats, but their teams are doing so much better that it's very difficult for Luka to win it if his team finishes 5th. So that his chances of winning totally depend, in my opinion, on where his team finishes. And finally, last but not least, Kevin Durant. I think this, even though he's obviously an amazing player, this has come out of nowhere. His play this season, he's having one of the greatest scoring seasons in NBA history. He's putting up 30 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and these are very KD-like numbers. However, in the last couple of seasons, we have not seen this prime-like KD. He is 34, and he's doing this at 34 years old, putting up 30 a game and having one of his best seasons in recent history. And he was definitely not a favorite to win MVP before the season started. But now that the season has started and he's playing like this and we're halfway through the season, we can see that he's definitely a front runner for MVP. And in addition to his personal stats, the Brooklyn Nets are 2nd in the East, which, like I said, winning really does matter for the MVP. I know that in a couple of months ago, I said that Luka would win MVP, and I am still sticking by that. Honestly, I still am, because I think that the Mavericks have enough shooting around them, and I know that the mid-season transfer deadline is coming up, And if they make a couple of transfers, to get more defense and just to get a little bit bigger inside, to have that post presence, because Dwight Powell is playing terribly and Christian Wood is so on and off that it's not consistent at all. I think that they can finish, 3 to 4, and with Luka's numbers, I think he'll remain these numbers. Maybe even get better, as crazy as it sounds. I think the numbers for Luka isn't an issue as long as he doesn't get injured and his team, like I said, finishes 3 or 4th. I think he might win, especially with how popular he is and how popular his style of play is with everyone, and how much the league is pushing Luka as to be that next, best player in the league, like the LeBron of the league, basically, after LeBron retires, is what the league is pushing Luka to be. So that will be a big factor in him potentially winning MVP. However, my second choice for MVP will again be Nikola Jokic. As crazy as it sounds, he might actually be the second player after Larry Bird to win an MVP 3 years in a row. He's averaging nearly a triple-double, and I don't know if it counts, 9.7 assists counts towards that triple-double, or if he needs to get the 10, specifically like 10 assists, or if 9.7 is good enough. But if he does end up averaging a triple-double this season, I do believe that Nikola Jokic may, especially with the Nuggets being first seed, may win his 3rd MVP in a row. It's an amazing season so far. We've had so many 40-point, 50-point. Donovan Mitchell just dropped a 71-point game. But I think the craziest part of it all will be that even though Nikola Jokic has won 2 MVPs back-to-back, he might win his 3rd MVP and be the first person to do it since Larry Bird. I'm excited to watch and see, and I'll see you next time. Peace.